Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the ICE podcast with me, your host, Austen Haney. And I just want to say right from the beginning that I am so excited about beginning this journey with you. And I'm also super pumped about the conversations that lie ahead of us as I bring in some of my friends and people that inspire me from all different walks of life. Some of them are going to be photographers, some of them are going to be pastors, some are going to be people that have done overseas work or in the nonprofit work, and really so many more different categories of people. But all of them share one thing in common, and that is that I believe they are doing the things that God uniquely created them to do. And I think that's so inspiring. And so we're going to just hear from them, hear their story about how did they find those things? What were some of the journey that they had to go on personally to get to this spot that they're in right now? And then also how they're using this thing to make a difference in people's lives. So I'm super pumped about that. And really the whole podcast is based around this premise that comes from Ephesians 2:10, which if you haven't heard this verse, it's just an incredibly profound and beautiful verse. But it says that you are God's masterpiece. I mean, come on, let's just meditate on that for a second. You are God's masterpiece. That means that He created you, that He has a plan for you, He values you, and you have worth before you ever go out and do a single thing. I love that. I love that our identity doesn't have to be in the things that we do, but simply in who we are and who are we created to be. So we are God's masterpiece. And yet I also love the second half of that verse, which says that you were created in Christ Jesus for good works, which He prepared before time so that you could walk in them. I love the invitation in this verse that we already have an identity that's solid, that's rock solid, and yet we also are invited into good works that God has set aside specifically for us. And so like I said, this is something that, to be honest with you, I have wrestled with and struggled with in my own life, is trying to figure out, well, what is that work? What is that thing, that calling, that sense of purpose that God created for me? So in this podcast, we're going to be bringing in people and asking them how did they discover that for themselves, and how are they still discovering that even in this season, because I believe we're always going to continue to be asking that question and looking for how can we do what God created us to do in this season. And so once again, we're going to be bringing in all different types of people, photographers, pastors, people in the nonprofit world, people in the medical field. And the idea is not that you will try to replicate or become exactly like any one of these guests, but that you can maybe gain something from their story or perspective they have, or even just maybe a practical tip that can help you for wherever you're at in life right now. And so we're calling this the ICE podcast, which is simply a short little acronym I came up with one day, which is short for Inspiring Creative Entrepreneurs. And that is going to be the type of people that I bring on this show. And that's also the goal of this podcast, is to inspire you, wherever you're at in your journey, to inspire you that you were created for a good work, and we want to help you walk in it. So I am so excited to be beginning. I can't wait for you to hear from some of these guests. They have literally been so inspiring in my life, and I think they're going to be so helpful for yours as well. I want to welcome you to the journey. If you're interested, I would love to invite you to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And I just want to say once again, I'm glad you're here. It's the ICE podcast, and we will see you very soon.